Hello friends, welcome to Seco Psycho. In this video, you're going to learn what is learning and one of the eminent theory in the history of psychology is a classical condition theory which was proposed by Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov. So typically, learning which plays a key role in the psychology has taken its shape from the heuristic concept. According to heuristic, learning is any relative permanent change in behavior brought about by experience or practice. Generally, we think that learning is when you learn something, or learning is learning how to do something. Here, heuristic clearly mentioned that a learning is nothing but it's a relatively permanent change. The relative permanent part of the definition refers to the fact that when people learn anything, some part of their brain is physically changed to record what they have learned. This is actually a process of memory, for without the ability to remember what happens, people cannot learn anything. Although there is no conclusive proof as yet, research suggests that once people learn something, it may be present somewhere in memory in physical form. If you take the principles of learning, these are the principles which plays a key role in the learning process. If one of these principles is not present, or if anything is missing from the learning process, it may not occur in a consistent way, or it may lead to unlearned process. Take a first one, that is readiness. Once Albert Einstein was asked, how you become intelligent? He said simply, I'm not intelligent, I'm just curious. That's how I became intelligent. So people who have curiosity to learn, eagerness to learn, they learn very fast than the people who don't have eagerness or readiness to learn. So you are physically, mentally should be present to learn something. Then only that process will take place smoothly. The second one is exercise. Here exercise is nothing but anything which is repeated, which is drilled, which is rehearsed again and again. Exercise tells that anything which you repeat again and again, anything which you do again and again, it is reinforced and it is stored in a long-term memory. So maintenance rehearsals and elaborative rehearsals play a key role to turn sensory memory into short-term memory and short-term memory into long-term memory. And the third one is effect. Here, effect is nothing but it is one of the law which was explained by Thorndike, law of effect, which plays a key role. The effect should takes place in an emotional way. Anything which affects our emotion is learned properly. Anything which is not at all added to our emotion, we just forget it because it doesn't play any importance in our life. So how the things are affecting your life plays a key role in learning process. That's why if you have any emotion when you're studying, if you have emotion, you study well. If you don't have any emotion in your study, you just don't take it seriously and just you easily forget the things when you're learning. And the next thing is primacy. It was said that when you learn first, you remember well. There is a saying, first impression is the best impression. In the same way, the things you learn first, the things you learn in the childhood, it is stored in long-term memory. For example, when you learn alphabets, you learn it when you're going to primary school or pre-primary school. After that, you learn many grammar rules and regulations. You may not remember all the grammar rules and regulations, but you do remember the alphabets A, B, C, D, and A for apple, B for boy, C for cat. So primacy effect plays a key role. If A is spelled like a bay or a or u, you are learning in a wrong process. So primacy affects our next level of learning process if the first level of learning process is not learned properly. And the next one is recency. Recency is nothing but a recent one. If I tell you to remember a telephone number, you may forget last 8 digits, but you'll still remember that last 2 digits. Anything which is learned recently, anything which is learned a few minutes ago, it is stored properly. And the next one is intensity. If you read a novel, you remember for 1 month. If you watch a movie with your friends, you can remember for 6 months. It means the intensity of the tools you're using plays a key role. People who are fed up with the learning textbooks, They don't show enough eagerness or readiness to study anything. But if they are placed in a projector, PPTs, or any short-term videos, or which are related to the topic, they could remember all these facts and concepts easily, and they can perform well in the examination. So the intensity plays a key role. That's why there is a saying: if you want to learn something, just you do it. Don't just eagerly mug up it. And the next one is the requirement. Requirement plays a key role in the learning process. People often learn because they need it, they require it, they make it as a skill to earn their livelihood. If you're crossing a river or lake to get into one place to another, you need to learn swimming. It's a requirement for you. If your family system is not good, you need to earn your livelihood. You will acquire a skill. It's your requirement. So basically, people often learn because they require it. And the last but not least is a freedom. It was said that people who have liberty, who are free to learn, they learn more than the people who are restricted to the classrooms. A learning process should not be only within the classroom. It should be comprehensive. It should be inclusive. So the student or a person should have freedom to learn whatever he wants. That freedom can improve his learning process. And in the same way, that freedom may produce a wrong or maladaptive to learning, like smoking, drinking, or the things which are not appropriate in the society. That freedom should be regulated with a good values or with a good ethics. So the learning process goes with the core values. Classical condition. It is one of the first theory which explained about how the learning process is done. Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov pioneered the empirical study of the basic principle of learning. He did a number of research and experiments on dogs, where he found that the dogs have been conditioning with something in the behavior. If he produced a new concept called reflex, an involuntary response, one that is not under personal control or choice. In classical conditioning, where the learning to make an involuntary response to a stimulus other than the original natural stimulus that normally produce the responses. So the natural stimulus is paired with a neutral stimulus, and that neutral stimulus is turned into conditioned stimulus. These are the elements of classical conditioning which plays a key role in your experimenting. Unconditional stimulus. It is a natural occurring stimulus that leads to an involuntary and unknown response. An unconditional response, an involuntary and unknown response to a natural occurring or unconditional stimulus. For example, when you place a food in front of a dog, food is a stimulus, it's an unconditional stimulus, and salivating from the mouth of a dog is unconditional response. Whereas neutral stimulus, a stimulus that has no effect on the desired response prior to conditioning. For example, you just ring a bell in front of a dog. That dog, it is a neutral stimulant which you couldn't affect the dog's response. So your neutral stimulus, we are making it a conditional stimulus, which is that has no effect on the desired response prior to conditioning. And that conditional response is a learned response to a conditional stimulus. When the bell is paired with the food, that is unconditional stimulus, it shows conditioned response without having food. Also, it is salivating when the bell has rung. It's a simple concept, I can explain it. So before conditioning, when you place the food, that is an unconditional stimulus, it is salivating, it is an unconditional response. When you just like ringing a bell, when you're like ringing a bell, the sound of a bell is a neutral stimulus and there is no response. That means there is no conditional response. Maybe there is no salivation, but the dog may say here and there without any proper response, without giving any proper response. In the third case, when you're pairing with the conditional stimulus with the unconditional stimulus, that is, you're pairing bell and food. Here, one thing you need to keep in your mind that conditional stimulus must be followed with unconditional stimulus to get condition. So when the bell has rung and food has placed, then it is salivating. After repeated experimentation after repeated rehearsals, the dog could learn what is the relation between the food and bell. So when the bell has rung, the food is given. So when the bell is rung, then the dog is conditioned to give response by salivation. So that's how we are making the neutral stimulus into conditional stimulus with the help of unconditional stimulus. These are the principles which plays a key role to strengthen the conditioning in the experimentation. For example, the conditional stimulus must come before the unconditional stimulus. It must, and the conditional stimulus and unconditional stimulus must come very close to it in time. Ideal, not more than 5 seconds or 500 milliseconds. If the length between the conditional stimulus and unconditional stimulus is very high, then dog couldn't figure out what is the relation between the conditional stimulus and unconditional stimulus, and the experimentation may fail. The neutral stimulus must be paired with the unconditional stimulus several times before conditioning, and conditional stimulus must be distinct. When you're placing unconditional stimulus with a conditional stimulus, they must not be same. For example, when you're placing like a milk with the food, it doesn't have any distinctive unconditional stimulus and conditional stimulus. Here you're choosing a bell which is a very distinctive conditional stimulus. The repeated pairing of an neutral stimulus and unconditional stimulus called acquisition or acquiring learning. So you're pairing with a neutral stimulus and unconditional stimulus to acquire the learning. If you place one unconditional stimulus there, it is not a learning, it's a reflexive involuntary response which is given by dog. And stimulus generalization. After repeated experimentation and repeated experiments, the dog may get a tendency to respond to a stimulus that is only similar to the original conditioned stimulus with the conditioned response. And the discrimination. A dog could figure out the difference between the original conditioned stimulus and other conditional stimulus. For example, when there is a horn from the outside, when there is a like alarm from the outside, the dog wouldn't salivate from the mouth because it is differentiating between the two stimulus. Whereas stimulus generalization, when it is hearing a sound from the outside, that is maybe the church bell sound, or it may be some ice cream bell sound, then it is salivating. It is generalizing the stimulus. And when you're not pairing, when you're just you're ringing the bell and you're not at all pairing with the food, that is unconscious stimulus, the dog may get into extinction. That means the weakening of a learned response following the removal of the unconditional stimulus. Spontaneous recovery. After getting the experimentation, you just left the dog for a few months or for a few weeks. Then one day there was a bell which was rung by someone. Then this dog is salivating. That means there is a recovery of the or reappearance of a learned response after extinction that has occurred. Higher order conditioning. It is one of the interesting condition where you converted a neutral stimulus into conditioned stimulus. Using that conditional stimulus, you're using a higher order of conditioning to pair with another conditioned stimulus, and here you are making learning process a bit complex. So it occurs only when a strong conditional stimulus is paired with a neutral stimulus, causing the neutral stimulus to become a second conditional stimulus. For example, you're using bell and light. When you on the light and when you ring the bell and you're placing the food, then the dog is salivating. After repeated conditioning, the dog is salivating with the light also. When you're on the light without ringing the bell also, it is salivating. So you're with using a strong neutral stimulus bell, you're making a higher order of conditioning by using the light also. So other thing is cognitive perspective. So modern perspective in psychology that focuses on the memory, intelligence, perception, problem solving, and learning. So cognitive is nothing but it's a cognition, that means thinking process. Even though it's only for dogs which is giving the salivation, where if you take human beings, even you're giving equal conditioning, a few people learning a bit fast and a few people are being in a different way. It is due to memory, intelligence, perception, and problem solving, which is playing a key role in learning process. Applications. So these are the applications where you will find in the daily life. For example, first one is a conditioned emotional response. So emotional response that has become classically conditioned to occur to learn stimuli. The best example of this conditioned emotional response was explained by J.B. Watson. He experimented on a small kid called Albert. Albert was conditioned with the rats, white rats. Whenever the white rat appeared, is getting near to the Albert, he made a strange noise that makes the Albert to get fear. After repeated the experimentation, the Albert learned that white rats are dangerous, and he conditioned with the fear of a certain phobia towards the white rats and the rats also. So the condition which affected our emotional responses. So basically phobias like fear of dogs or fear of cats or fear of lizards, it is conditioned with the emotional response. And the second one is like a vicarious condition or vicarious conditioning. Here it is used in advertisement. So here you're using an emotion or involuntary response by watching the reaction of another person. For example, when a few boys and girls they are getting afraid of dogs like black dogs. When you're seeing those guys who are afraid of black dogs, you're conditioned. You're taking that same emotion towards, even though you don't have bad experience with your with the bad dogs, still with the learning with the learning from others, you got to fear that black dogs are dangerous. In the same way, advertisements also, you can find in advertisement many emotions are added to make attractive that audience that our product is the best and you must buy it. So adding that emotion not only attracts the consumers, but also it makes that a person that to believe that this product is better than other product. Conditional taste aversion is one of the therapy which was given in a heuristic approach. So development of a nausea or aversion response to a particular taste because that taste was followed by nausea reaction occurring after only one association. The best example of taste aversion is people who are highly dependent on alcohol. They given the taste aversion, giving some injections or medicine or food which will give a nausea type of feeling when they are going to drink alcohol. So when you're getting a nausea feeling after eating something, it the mind will condition that that food is very dangerous to have it. The same condition taste aversion is as found in the birds also, but it is very different. Birds have color conditioning, whereas human beings have taste aversion. When the birds see certain insects which are in different like brown color, which the color which is not at all okay with the birds, they just avoid it. They just don't eat it. The same way, if anything, any food which is making you to feel nausea, you avoid it. So the conditioned taste aversion is different from human beings and animals. Biological preparedness. Referring to the tendency of animals to learn certain associations such as taste and nausea with only one or few pairing due to survival value of the learning. So biological preparedness is a certain association where it is conditioned in our instincts to make sure that we don't fall sick after eating a certain food items. As I given the best example of birds like pigeons, uh, while mammals are biologically prepared to associate a taste with illness, birds are biologically prepared to associate visual characteristics with illness. The like there is a certain species of moth with the coloring that mimics the monarchy butterfly. That particular butterfly is poisonous to birds, but the moth isn't. The moth mimicry causes birds to avoid eating it. Even though it is quite edible, researchers have found that some association between certain stimuli and responses are far easier to form than others, and that this is true in both animals and people. That's how they explain the biological preparedness. So that's all, friends. The another thing, drug dependence, which is the high of drug use, whether it comes from an opiate derivation or a stimulant or an depressant such as alcohol often takes place in certain surroundings with a certain other people and perhaps even using certain objects such as tiny spoons used by coconut addicts and like glasses which were used by alcohols. These people setting an object can become conditioned stimulus that are associated with a drug eye and can produce a conditioned eye response. The presence of these cues can make it even harder to resist using the drug because the body and mind have become classically conditioned to associate drug use with the cues. So basically, Beard's therapist says that the cues which will give certain stimulus to your drug dependency, avoid it and replace that stimulus or cues with other cues, which is okay with you. So that's all, friends. Class for the classical condition theory, Pavlov got Nobel Prize, and his whole life was experimented on dogs and classical condition theory. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.